watch for new clues. Several of Nancy Guthrie's neighbors tell NBC News investigators returned this week asking them about any potential internet issues the night of Nancy's disappearance. The homeowners say the agents told them several neighbors mentioned glitches with their internet that night. One of those neighbors tells us when they checked on their Ring cameras, this one here, the one closest to Nancy's property, said not available during the overnight hours of the abduction.
Here in their backyard, you can actually see Nancy's home. It's that brick house there. Experts tell us it would likely take a professional-grade Wi-Fi jammer to knock out internet all the way to the back of this property.
Here's the jammer.
9:50 p.m. The garage door closes. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, pacemaker, limited mobility, alone, is home safe, heading to bed. That is the last verified moment anyone on Earth can place her inside that house alive. For hours later, a masked man appears on her doorbell camera. Black mustache, Ozark Trail backpack. Moving through the darkness of the Catalina foothills in Tucson, Arizona with a calm that does not belong to someone acting on impulse. He does not hesitate. He does not look around nervously the way someone does when they are somewhere they should not be. He moves like a man who has been to this address before. Like a man who already knew exactly where every camera was positioned. Like a man who came prepared. And here is the detail that should make you stop breathing for a moment. The Ring cameras in this neighborhood, the ones mounted on backyard fences and garage walls and rear porches of the homes surrounding Nancy's brick house on the north side of Tucson, the ones that should have captured everything that happened that night, went completely dark. Not one camera. Not two. Several. Neighbors woke up the next morning, checked their footage, and found the same two words staring back at them. Not available. A blind spot, carved out of an entire neighborhood, with surgical precision. In the middle of the night, experts who spoke to investigators say it would take a professional-grade Wi-Fi jammer to knock out internet coverage that far back into those properties. Someone did not just take Nancy Guthrie. Someone engineered her disappearance. And then the story takes a turn that nobody anticipated. Her daughter, Savannah Guthrie, the face of NBC's Today Show, one of the most recognized journalists in America, a woman whose face appears on television screens in millions of homes every single morning, made 6 videos in 31 days. She offered $1 million. She went on Instagram and looked directly into the camera and told whoever took her mother, "We will pay." She did everything a desperate daughter is supposed to do. And then a retired FBI profiler, the man who helped catch the Unabomber, not with DNA, not with surveillance footage, not with a single tip, but by reading his words and understanding his mind, sat down and watched every single one of those 6 videos. When he was done, he did not talk about the masked man on the doorbell camera. He did not talk about the jammer. He did not talk about the $1 million reward. He went on national television, looked into the camera, and asked whether Savannah Guthrie suspects her own sister. Pause. Sit with that for one moment. 30 years inside the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. The darkest rooms in American law enforcement. The worst cases this country has ever produced. And after watching 6 videos of a grieving daughter, that is the question he walked away with. Not about the kidnapper. About the family. Before we go any further, I need you to do something right now. If you have been following this case and you feel like the official story and the verified facts are not adding up the same way, hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications immediately. Because what I am about to show you in detail number 3 is the kind of thing that does not make the evening news. It does not trend on social media. It lives in court documents and law enforcement sources and the contradictions hiding inside the sheriff's own press conferences. You need to be here for it. Subscribe right now. And then stay with me, because we are just getting started. Tonight I am going to walk you through 7 verified, sourced on the record details. Not theories. Not speculation. Not anything recycled from a Reddit thread. 7 details. Some from active investigators. Some from former FBI and CIA operatives who have spoken publicly. Some from the sheriff's own contradictions captured on camera. And one of them, the one that lands the hardest, the one that changes the entire shape of this story, comes from a sentence Savannah Guthrie said on camera. A sentence she has never walked back. A sentence the whole world heard and almost nobody truly stopped to listen to. By the time we reach detail 7, you will not just understand why the profiler asked that question about the sister. You will understand why, once you lay everything side by side in chronological order, the answer has been visible this entire time. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for over 30 days. She is 84 years old. She is someone's mother. She is someone's grandmother. She raised her children in a home where faith was not a decoration on the wall but a daily practice, where dinner was not just food on a table but a ritual that meant something. She has a laugh, her family says, that you could hear from the next room. Sharp wit, deep warmth, the kind of woman whose presence fills a house even when she is sitting still. She lives alone in a brick house nestled in the Catalina foothills on the north side of Tucson, Arizona. A quiet, upscale neighborhood where people know their neighbors, where garage doors close at reasonable hours, where nothing like this is supposed to happen. She has limited mobility. She wears a pacemaker. She takes daily medication that, if missed for even a short window of time, could become fatal. And she deserves to come home. That is why we are here tonight. Not for the drama. Not for the speculation. For Nancy. Let's get into it. The night of January 31st, what actually happened? January 31st. A Thursday evening in Tucson, Arizona. Nancy Guthrie spends the evening at her daughter Annie's home, approximately 4 miles from her own house in the Catalina foothills. Dinner with family. The kind of evening that, on the surface, looks entirely ordinary. Warm. Normal. Safe. She did not drive herself. She took an Uber to get there. She did not take an Uber home. Her son-in-law, Tommaso, drove her. At 9:48 p.m., Tommaso pulls into the driveway of Nancy's home on the north side of Tucson. According to the Pima County Sheriff's Department official timeline, he waited in that driveway until she was inside. The garage door closed at 9:50 p.m. Authorities placed that moment as the last confirmed time Nancy Guthrie was home and heading to bed. 4 hours later, the masked man appears. Now, let's establish exactly what Tommaso knew in that driveway at 9:50 p.m. on the night of January 31st. He knew what time she arrived home. He knew she was alone. He knew the layout of that brick house because he had been inside it countless times. He knew where the cameras were positioned. He knew about her limited mobility. He knew about the pacemaker. He knew about the medication schedule. And he knew with complete certainty that there would be a window of hours before anyone checked on her again. Now, here is what I need you to hear clearly before we go any further. And I mean this. Knowing these things does not make someone guilty. Say that again because it matters. Knowing these things does not make Tommaso guilty of anything. Every family member in Nancy Guthrie's life knew most of this information. Her children, her grandchildren, her close friends. Anyone who loved her and spent time in her home carried varying degrees of this knowledge. That is simply the nature of being close to someone. But here is what former FBI Special Agent and behavioral analyst Jim Clemente, who has spoken publicly about this case, says about criminal investigations at every level from a small-town sheriff's department all the way to the FBI's most elite units. Every single investigation starts with the same question. Who was the last person to see the victim? It is not an accusation. It is the first thread, the starting point, the name you write at the top of the page before anything else happens. Because the last person to see someone alive carries information nobody else has. They were present when everyone else was not. In this case, that person is Tommaso, and that fact has not changed once in 32 days. Not once. Former CIA and FBI Special Agent Tracy Walder, speaking to People magazine, confirmed that in cases involving elderly victims taken from private residences, the investigation almost always begins inside the victim's immediate circle. Not because family members are presumed guilty, because statistically and behaviorally, that is where the answers most often live. Savannah Guthrie has known this since the morning of February 1st when she first learned her mother was gone. Every video she has made since that morning, every carefully worded statement, every public appearance, every Instagram post has been filmed through the lens of that knowledge. She knows who drove her mother home. She knows whose name sits at the top of that first page. Keep that inside everything you hear tonight. It is the foundation that every other detail is built on. Detail 2. The searches that were not routine. 1 week after Nancy Guthrie vanished on February 7th, investigators arrived at Annie and Tommaso's home in Tucson after sundown. Think about that timing. Not noon. Not mid-afternoon. After dark. Fox News correspondent Sarah Rumpf-Witten and News Nation's Brian Enton were already on the scene documenting the search in real time from outside the property. White camera flashes were visible coming from inside the garage. Investigators moving through every room, every surface, every corner of that house photographed and recorded. And then an unmarked white truck pulled up. From it, investigators carried a silver briefcase into the house. A SWAT technology expert speaking to the Daily Mail identified it without hesitation. That silver briefcase was a Cellebrite case. If you do not know what that means, let me tell you exactly what it means. A Cellebrite device is a specialized piece of law enforcement technology used to extract digital forensic evidence from phones, tablets, and computers. It can recover deleted messages, deleted calls, deleted photographs, location data going back weeks or months, app activity, financial transactions. Everything a person believed was gone forever. The FBI was not just searching Annie and Tommaso's home. They were pulling data from the family's devices. Investigators left that house wearing blue gloves and carrying brown evidence bags. Former CIA and FBI Special Agent Tracy Walder confirmed to People magazine that those bags were evidence containers and the white case held evidence processing equipment. Now here is what makes this even more significant. This was not the first search. The FBI had already searched Annie and Tommaso's home on February 4th, 3 days after Nancy vanished. This February 7th visit was the second search inside 4 days of the same residence. NBC News confirmed that both searches were consent-based. Annie and Tommaso agreed to let investigators inside without a warrant. Attorney Darren Kavinicki made an important point about this distinction. Consent-based searches mean investigators did not yet have probable cause. If they had probable cause, they would have obtained a warrant. Instead, they asked permission. That is a legitimate counterargument, and it deserves to be stated clearly. But here is what is not standard investigative protocol regardless of how you interpret the consent question. Searching the same home twice inside 4 days. Arriving after dark. Bringing a Cellebrite device for digital forensic extraction. Leaving with evidence bags. And then the very next morning, February 8th, returning to Nancy's brick house in the Catalina foothills where drone footage captured investigators probing the septic tank in the backyard with a long pole. They also examined the manhole on the property. Fox 10 Phoenix confirmed this marked a clear and deliberate shift in the investigation. From general searching to granular forensic collection. Detail 3, the luminol question. About that after dark timing on February 7th. Former FBI Special Agent Brianna Fox publicly raised the question of whether luminol was used during the evening search at Annie and Tommaso's home in Tucson. If you are not familiar with luminol, here is what it is. Luminol is a chemical reagent used by law enforcement to detect trace amounts of blood. Blood that has been cleaned. Blood that is invisible to the naked eye. Blood that a person believed was completely gone. Here is the critical detail. Luminol requires complete darkness to work. The investigators arrived at Annie and Tommaso's home after sundown on February 7th. They left before midnight. The timing is entirely consistent with luminol deployment. Agent Fox said she would not assume deeper meaning from the timing alone because the FBI documents everything as standard protocol regardless of specific techniques used. That is a fair and honest qualification, and it stands. But the FBI does not carry a Cellebrite briefcase into your home, photograph every room for 3 hours, and arrive specifically after dark because they have already cleared you and moved on. And now here is the detail that should stop you completely. That same evening, February 7th, the same night that the FBI spent 3 hours inside Annie's home extracting data from phones and computers, Savannah Guthrie stood beside Annie on camera, looked directly into the lens, and said, "We received your message and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is very valuable to us and we will pay." The same day, the same evening, the FBI inside the house pulling deleted data from the family's devices. And Savannah on camera speaking directly to the kidnapper. Was she asking herself questions that night that she could not ask on camera? Detail 4. The car. The vehicle Tommaso Cini used to drive Nancy Guthrie home on the night of January 31st was seized by investigators and placed into evidence. Journalist Ashley Banfield broke this story on her podcast Drop Dead Serious, citing a law enforcement source she described as, and these are her words, very connected with impeccable credentials. The car was taken. It was held. And here is where the Pima County Sheriff's Department's official timeline begins to contradict itself in ways that have never been explained. February 16th, 2 weeks after Nancy vanished. The Pima County Sheriff stands at a podium and makes a definitive public statement. He says, and these are his exact words on camera, "Not one single person in the family is a suspect. They were cleared in the first few days." He uses past tense. Processed vehicles. Past tense. Done. Finished. Returned. February 26th. 10 days after that public clearance statement. CBS 5 reporter Brianna Whitney asks the Sheriff's Department directly about the status of the car. Their response: "All we can say at this time is that the vehicle is still part of the investigation. Cleared on day 16. Car still held on day 27. The sheriff has never explained that contradiction. Not once. Not in any press conference. Not in any public statement. He told the country the vehicles were processed and returned while Tommaso's car was sitting in an evidence lot." Detail 5. 22 days of silence. Here is what the national coverage of this case has largely chosen not to examine directly. Savannah Guthrie has made 6 public video statements since her mother disappeared. February 4th, February 7th, February 14th, February 18th, February 24th, March 2nd. 6 appearances in 31 days. A $1 million reward. A $500,000 donation to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Weekly Instagram posts. Interviews. Public pleas. A woman who placed her grief on display for the entire country because she believed that visibility was the only weapon she had left. That is the behavior of someone fighting with everything they have. Now let's talk about Annie. Annie Guthrie appeared in 2 group videos, February 4th and February 7th. She spoke. She was present. She stood beside her sister in Tucson. And then she disappeared from public view for 22 consecutive days. 22 days. The wife of the last person to see Nancy alive. The sister of one of the most visible journalists in America. Living in the same city where her mother vanished. While the FBI searched her home twice. While the car sat in an evidence lot. While the country watched and waited. 22 days of silence. Now, and this matters, there are innocent explanations for this. Real ones that deserve to be stated fully. Annie Guthrie is not a television personality. She has never lived in public view the way Savannah has. She was almost certainly advised by legal counsel to limit her public statements. And if so, that is entirely standard and entirely reasonable advice in a high-profile investigation involving federal agents. Not everyone processes grief by standing in front of a camera. Silence is not a confession. Grief does not have a required public format. All of that is true. All of it. But here is what former FBI behavioral analyst Jim Clemente and others who have examined missing persons cases at the federal level say about the absence of behavior. In kidnapping cases involving elderly victims taken from private residences, the people closest to the victim typically become the most vocal public advocates. They hold press conferences. They speak directly to the kidnapper. They make themselves visible because visibility feels like action when action is all you have left. That is the behavioral baseline. Savannah follows that baseline precisely. Annie does not. And Savannah, who shares a mother with Annie, who is living in Tucson and sees her sister regularly, who watched federal agents search Annie's home and watched the car sit in evidence and read every headline the same as the rest of us. Savannah knows that contrast better than anyone watching from the outside. She lives inside it every single day. Detail 6. The profiler's question. James Fitzgerald spent 30 years inside the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. He is the man whose linguistic profiling work helped identify and ultimately bring down Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. He did not do it with DNA. He did not do it with surveillance footage. He did it by reading words and understanding what those words revealed about the mind that produced them. He watched all 6 of Savannah Guthrie's videos. Every single one. And when he was done, he went on national television and did not talk about the masked man on the doorbell camera at Nancy's home in the Catalina foothills. He did not talk about the Wi-Fi jammer. He did not talk about the $1 million reward or the federal investigation. He looked into the camera and asked whether Savannah Guthrie suspects her own sister. Think about what it takes to arrive at that question. Not a blogger, not a Reddit thread, not anonymous speculation on social media. The man who read the Unabomber's words and identified a domestic terrorist hiding in a Montana cabin. That man watched 6 videos of a grieving daughter and walked away asking about the family. On the Megyn Kelly show on February 27, Fitzgerald said something that cut through everything else being said about this case. He said the details surrounding the vehicle, the searches, and the behavioral patterns of those closest to Nancy raised what he described as, in his exact words, interesting red flags. He said if he were completely innocent, he would have hired an attorney and demanded the car back immediately. Tommaso Cini did not demand the car back. Annie Guthrie did not demand the car back. And when the vehicle was finally returned after more than 30 days in evidence, the Pima County Sheriff's Department offered zero public explanation for what they found or why it took that long. Now compare that to this single detail that nobody in the national media has spent enough time on. Luke Daly, the man the FBI descended on with a full tactical SWAT team on February 13th. Armored vehicles. Agents in full tactical gear. A federal raid on his Tucson area property that looked like something out of a major operation because it was. Luke Daly had his Range Rover returned in approximately 2 weeks. Same investigation. Same Pima County jurisdiction. Same case. The man they sent a SWAT team after got his car back faster than the family the sheriff publicly declared had been cleared. Nobody in law enforcement has explained that discrepancy. Not once. The contradiction nobody has resolved. Here is what the verified public record shows when you lay it out in chronological order without interpretation. January 31st. Tucson, Arizona. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, arrives home at her brick house in the Catalina foothills at 9:48 p.m. Her son-in-law Tommaso Cini waits in the driveway until the garage door closes at 9:50 p.m. She is alone. She is home. She is safe. For hours later, a masked man with a black mustache and an Ozark Trail backpack appears on her doorbell camera moving through her property in the Catalina foothills with calm and deliberate purpose. The Ring cameras in the surrounding neighborhood go dark. Neighbors find the same 2 words the next morning. Not available. February 1st. Nancy Guthrie is reported missing. The Pima County Sheriff's Department opens an investigation. February 4th. Investigators conduct the first consent-based search of Annie and Tommaso Cini's home in Tucson. The same day, Savannah and Annie appear together on camera for the first time publicly appealing for Nancy's return. February 7th. Investigators conduct the second search of Annie and Tommaso's home. After dark, with a Cellebrite digital forensic device, carrying brown evidence bags out. That same evening, Savannah stands beside Annie on camera and says, "We will pay." February 8th. Investigators return to Nancy's home in the Catalina foothills. Drone footage captures them probing the septic tank and examining the manhole in the backyard. February 13th. Federal agents conduct a full tactical SWAT raid on Luke Daly's property in the Tucson area. His Range Rover is returned approximately 2 weeks later. February 16th. The Pima County Sheriff stands at a podium and publicly states not one single person in the family is a suspect. He says vehicles were processed. Past tense. February 24th. Savannah Guthrie appears alone on camera. No Annie. No Cameron. Just her. And she says something that sounds nothing like anything she has said in the previous 5 videos. February 26th. CBS 5 asks the Pima County Sheriff's Department about the status of Tommaso's car. The response: the vehicle is still part of the investigation. The sheriff said processed and returned on February 16th. The car was confirmed still in evidence on February 26th. That contradiction has never been addressed, never been explained, never been walked back or clarified in any public statement from the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Former FBI agent Maureen O'Connell said it plainly on the Megyn Kelly Show on February 27th. You only keep a car if you need it for trial. If you have watched this far and something about this timeline is sitting differently with you than it was 15 minutes ago, I want you to do one thing. Subscribe, because this case is not over. The details are still moving, and the next video is going to cover something that has not been reported anywhere yet. Something that emerged from the second search that the Pima County Sheriff's Department has never addressed publicly. You need to be subscribed when that video drops. Hit subscribe right now, and let's get to Detail 7. Detail 7, the language that shifted. February 7th, Tucson, Arizona. Savannah Guthrie stands with Annie and Cameron in front of a camera. She holds their hands. She looks directly into the lens, and she says, "We received your message and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is very valuable to us and we will pay." Read those words again slowly. We will pay. That is not grief language. That is not the language of someone who has accepted a loss or is preparing for the worst. That is not eulogy language or memorial language or the language of despair. That is ransom negotiation language. Active, present tense. Directed specifically at whoever is holding Nancy Guthrie. The family is unified. Annie is standing right beside Savannah. The message is unambiguous. Bring Nancy home and money changes hands. We are still in this. We believe she is alive. We will pay. Now. February 24th. 17 days later. Savannah is alone. No Annie beside her. No Cameron. Just her and a camera at a location in Tucson. And she says words that sound nothing like the words she used 17 days ago. She says, "We still believe in a miracle. We still believe that she can come home. Hope against hope. As my sister says, we are blowing on the embers of hope." And then she says this, "She may already be gone. She may have already gone home to the Lord that she loves and is dancing in heaven with her mom and her dad and with her beloved brother Pierce and with our daddy." Stop. Go back to February 7th. We will pay. Present tense. Active. Negotiating. Fighting. Now go to February 24th. She may already be gone. Past tense. Acceptance. Eulogy language. The language of someone preparing for a loss, not fighting against one. 17 days. That is not grief evolving naturally over time. Grief does not move in a straight line from active negotiation to quiet acceptance of death in 17 days while a federal investigation is still open and active and $1 million reward is still on the table. James Fitzgerald, who has spent his career reading the language of people under extreme psychological pressure, watched that shift. He did not talk about the masked man. He talked about the family. And specifically, he asked the question that behavioral analysis of those 6 videos led him to. Whether Savannah Guthrie suspects her own sister. Not whether Savannah is involved. Whether Savannah, standing in Tucson, watching her sister's home get searched twice, watching the car sit in evidence, watching the FBI arrive with a Cellebrite device after dark, watching the sheriff contradict himself on camera, watching the behavioral silence of 22 consecutive days from the last person to see Nancy alive alongside her husband who drove Nancy home that night, whether Savannah has looked at everything she knows from the inside and arrived at a question she has not yet been able to say out loud. That is what the profiler asked. That is what 30 years inside the FBI's darkest rooms led him to. That is Detail 7. Nancy Guthrie is not a headline. She is 84 years old. She has a laugh you could hear from the next room. She raised her children in a home where faith meant something and dinner meant something and being together meant something. She lives in a brick house in the Catalina foothills in Tucson, Arizona. She has been missing for over 30 days. She is wearing a pacemaker. She takes daily medication. She has limited mobility. She is someone's mother. She is someone's grandmother. And she deserves every single question we are willing to ask on her behalf. Because Nancy Guthrie deserves to come home. Say her name. Share this video. Not for the views. Not for the algorithm. Because every time someone shares this, Nancy Guthrie's name reaches a new set of eyes. And somewhere in the world right now, someone knows something. Share it. Subscribe. Because this case is not over. The details are still moving. And I will be here every single time something new surfaces. Nancy Guthrie. Say her name.